There we go. Okay. So we just introduced ourselves as members of the Learning UW team. This is the Learning UW team. So you can see we are not a small team.
Photos.
There are 19 of us total. And this is pertinent. I don't even know if we have everybody on this team. But we do. Wow.
Yeah, an email of the last one is 11 o'clock a.m. this morning. So it is a freshly designed slide for you.
So we are a large team, and this is pertinent to what we're going to talk about because we're kind of organized three basic silos. You've got tool admins. So these are the folks who actually admin Canvas and some of our other tools. We really hope that Susan doesn't quit anytime soon after what happened a couple weeks ago. Then we also have where the three of us are, we're in this consultants and product owners, and then kind of the heart of the team is the support, the triage, documentation. They're the ones who work with the help desk and then work with the admins and us consultants. So I point all this out to show that there's a reason why the support, triage, and documentation is in the middle, which is that we as consultants work mostly with a triage and support, and not as much on a day-to-day basis with full admins. We do have a weekly meeting where we all get together and fight each other. At least nobody's told me they don't like me. But we don't necessarily work together all the time. And so that was one of the things that we had to kind of overcome when it came to creating this. So first thing I'm going to touch on very briefly is this what we call filling the institutional void without owning the space. Because as we know with AI, there is no one expert on campus. We knew that from the beginning, that we couldn't be like, we are the AI expert. You should only listen to us. So how did we get around that? We'll talk about that.
Timeline.
So what I'm going to talk about is kind of how we developed. We had actually what turned out to be a very short development. So, and yet it was still successful, which we're happy about. So we have a consultants meeting where we talk about consulting stuff. And last summer, during that meeting, we were kind of working with the Center for Teaching, Learning, Mentoring, and they were doing some AI stuff. And we're like, hey, you know, there's really no like tool training on campus around AI tools. And nobody's planning to offer it. And maybe we should get involved in this space. So that started in August, and then August 20th was when we had our initial kickoff meeting. And the reason why I showed you the picture of the whole team is that there were 10 of us from the team who were in this meeting. So this is a large working group of folks who don't necessarily work together on a day-by-day basis, who are all involved in this project. Because we knew we wanted to get something launched in the fall, we were like, we're going to kind of prioritize this, and we started having weekly meetings with that whole larger group. And that's what September was. But we also had kind of subgroups because there was a lot of work that had to happen in between. We're like, okay, you guys are going to work on this part of the presentation, you're going to work on this part, and then the weekly check-in meetings are when we kind of had to put it all together. So September is when we did most of the development.
And then starting in mid-September is when we started reaching out to partners around campus, and I'll talk more about this in a minute. And then October 3rd is when we had our initial run through, and that's where we invited all of our campus partners to come because we're like, we need your feedback. We want your feedback. Please come. And then our first official training, which we will talk more about later, was on October 20th. And it's not working again.
Jane's presence in a classroom.
Can I?
The slides are displayed next to the small video called from the classroom.
James, I'll go ahead right now.
There we go. Okay. So, and this is where I talk about not owning the space, right? We knew that we're not even the admins of these tools, right? The AI tools are admin by PCS. And there's a whole lot of other folks on campus that we knew we needed to work with. So these are the ones that we spent the most time with. So PCS, Do It Productivity Collaborative Solutions. CTLM was working with us a lot on in this space, particularly how it impacted teaching and learning. We had folks from the UW Libraries, from the Writing Center. We had from the Do It Google team and the Microsoft team because of Gemini and Copilot and communications. And we basically got all these people together in this run through and said, please give us feedback. And they did. They gave us a lot of really good, helpful feedback because, again, we knew going into it, we were not, we couldn't own this space.
Takeaways.
Okay. So what did we learn from just this development? So this, August through October timeline in developing this AI training. So our takeaways, number one, leadership and team buy-in is essential. And what I mean by this is the only reason we even moved forward with this in the beginning was because Tamara Walker, who's the head of Do It, and Christy Bergeron, who's the head of our team, were like, we should do something in this space. If they didn't say we should do something in this space, none of this would have happened. Christy was part of that larger team, so she was there on a week by week basis. So it's not like we had to go back to leadership all the time with what we were doing. She was involved in the process from the beginning. So having that buy-in from leadership and then also from the team, right? There were 10 of us. Over half of the team volunteered. This was a volunteer thing. Nobody was voluntold. It was like, if you're interested in helping develop AI training, let us know. And it was 10 of us. And so there was a lot of buy-in from folks on the team. Self-imposed deadlines help herd cats. Now, there's no controversial topics in AI, right? So you can imagine when you have 10 people in a room with a lot of different opinions about things, that's a lot of cats to herd. So thankfully, because we had such a short deadline, we were like, nope, okay, this is what's got to happen. This is what got to happen. Got to move on, got to move on. And so we used the deadlines to continue to drive the project, even though we weren't all necessarily agreeing about every single thing that was getting put in or said about it. The pre-existing relationships with campus partners. So all of those people that I just pointed out, we already had pre-existing relationships with them. This kind of ties back to the building trust. If you were in that one earlier with Todd Schechter and Elizabeth Simcock, is that we already had those pre-existing relationships. So when we reached out to say, hey, we're developing this training, they weren't like, what the crap are you doing, man? They were like, oh yeah, you guys, yeah, we want to help you. And they did help us. And we made sure that they were involved and it was transparent and we weren't like, we're taking ownership of this space or anything like that. And then, so this is the final one, embracing our ignorance was key because we knew we were ignorant. We knew there was a lot that we didn't know. So we had to depend on other people. And in all of our presentations, we emphasize that like we are not the experts. We can talk about the things that we know about here, but here's the various experts in the various fields. You're going to want to talk to them if you have further questions because we don't have the answers. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Andy.
Mastering the intake avalanche.
All right, thanks, James.
It's go time.
All right, so October 20th was our go live. October 20th, 2025, we felt prepared. We felt like we had met with all the initial stakeholders that should be at the initial table. That was a big key part of it. We had buy-in for leadership. We decided on the topics that we thought were germane to a broad audience that were kind of like the tip of the iceberg for AI. We felt ready to go. One thing we didn't know, though, was what the response was going to be. So the way that we advertise for these sessions is that we basically use our standard communication process of going through newsletters, email. Our partners in CTLM also helped advertise for it too, but there was no registration system at the front end. So we just had a link to a Zoom meeting, and if you wanted to attend this first general session, click on the link. So we had no expectations really. We knew there was a demand, but we didn't know what that demand was going to be. And when we went live, for that first meeting, we had over 500 people try to get into the Zoom meeting. So Zoom, our particular meeting had a cap of 300. We had to bump that up in real time. We quickly ran against that 300 cap. By the time it was said and done, some people dropped off before they could get in. We had over 400 participants in that first meeting. So the response was overwhelming. We were not expecting that many people. The presentation went fine, we felt like, but the chat with a hot topic like AI really was unwieldy. It was too much to handle. There were too many people asking too many questions, even with moderators in the chat. And it was an unwieldy size course. So we quickly knew that we had to do something about this if we were going to proceed. Furthermore, this told us that there was a lot more work coming ahead, because if we had this kind of initial response, we knew that other people were going to want to see the subsequent sessions. So really quickly, we knew that we were in demand. We knew that already, but the demand exceeded what we were expecting. We also realized that we need to start capping the enrollment in these courses, which means we need to start having some sort of registration process for our sessions. So we needed to quickly adapt to that. And keep in mind, if we're cutting down 500 participants to smaller chunks, that means more sessions for us. So once again, more work. And that's a theme you're going to see here too. Immediately after that first session too, we were approached about doing customized sessions. So these first sessions were broad. They were meant for the broadest possible audience, just kind of a general session. But immediately we were asked to start doing customized sessions for individual schools, colleges, and divisions. Now, the way that looked was about 80% of the same material, but we would customize some of the finer points to some things that were germane to that department. Our first group here was the English instructors. So they were focused on academic integrity, plagiarism, things like that. And we found that other groups had other concerns, like some groups were focused on FERPA. Other groups more focused on HIPAA. So we started doing, in addition to the general sessions, we started doing customized sessions as well. So over the next 6 months, we did almost 24 sessions. Nearly half of them were for customized customers. So customization should be mentioned to really up the ante in terms of our workload. So instead of just doing copy and paste for every general session, just doing the same thing over and over again, we're now doing customization sessions where we're meeting with stakeholders and representatives from those individual departments, figuring out what they want to do, and then we're tailoring, like I said, 15 to 20% of the presentation toward them. It really expanded the amount of time that we were spending on these AI sessions. Lessons learned here. AI usage is individualized. So the broad sessions definitely had an audience. They were packed houses, but with the individual sessions, the customized sessions, we needed to keep that in mind too, that we need to meet people where they're at because different people have different concerns and different use cases when it comes to AI. And then staying in our lane. This was a big one because when we were doing the customized sessions, we were starting to get asked questions where we were not comfortable venturing into certain waters. We want to be flexible, we want to be helpful, but we're not experts in this area as consultants. We're technologists. Our understanding is broad but shallow. So there were certain times we had to say there are other groups that would be a better fit for those types of topics. So the takeaways here, as the needs shift, we need to shift with it. So we needed to adapt to the demand in real time. We didn't know what to expect that first session. Within the first week, we knew that there was a huge demand. There was also a huge demand for customization sessions. We adapted and adjusted to all that in real time. Freedom isn't free. So meaning with the flexibility that we had, that also comes at the cost of structure. So without the structure, we didn't have a point person. We didn't have a lead within our group. Different people were handling different parts of the sessions and sometimes handing them off to different people. So that flexibility came at the cost of some process, and that lack of process at times created friction and miscommunications, and especially when this kind of like rapid prototyping that we were doing in real time. So at the end, we were always trying to balance the freedom and flexibility that we had with developing processes in real time that can meet obviously the customer's needs, but also make it easy for us to deliver these in a rapid cadence. So next, I'll hand it over to Chris.
Scaling through extreme operational flexibility.
Speaking of rapid cadence, right? We're just clicking through. So I'm going to talk about kind of the scaling aspect of it, the operational flexibility that we really had to lean into because of the things that Andy was talking about. There were so many moving parts in this process, and we were holding on and doing the best we could and are really grateful to be here where we are today. So we talked about this before. We hit the limit. The day that the avalanche started was October 20th, 2025. Lesson learned number one, Zoom has capacity of 300 by default. And I give that example in the way of none of us checked. None of us made the assumption. None of us asked the question. So all through this process, it was really a learning process for us as well. We were learning the technologies. We were learning how to work together. We were learning how to work in nebulous spaces. Number one is check the capacity for your technology before you use it and depend on it.
Infographic.
By the numbers. So the highest number of attendees we ever had at a session was 421, and that was that first session. As Andy said, that's not sustainable. We could not give a presentation accurately to 421 people that would be quality. We talked about the 12 general sessions and the 11 custom sessions. Some of the other custom sessions involved SMPH, the School of Education, Women in Technology. So we really were hitting a very broad perspective of campus. All in all, by the numbers, and this doesn't involve some of those customized groups because they ran them through their Zoom interface, so we don't have the same records. But we estimate that over 1,900 university faculty and staff attended our trainings from October through last week, so in about 7 months. Operational agility, we were building the plane while we were flying it in a lot of ways. And we were able to do that because we were regrouping, we were analyzing, and we were revising at every step. So after each presentation, we did a quick after meeting. What went well? What do we need to do different next time? And then we would analyze, we would look at some of the feedback that we would get from some of the presentations we had done in the past. We were asked sometimes to do presentations that we had to decline because we weren't the right folks to be doing the presentation. So that called for some self-awareness and our ability to say no in a helpful way, not for us, but let's get you to somebody who can sort of way. And then the revisions, as we talked about, each presentation was slightly different. Even each of the general sessions was slightly different because different folks did different presentations. We were a team where some of us had a lot of experience presenting, whereas other folks, this was really their first step into that space. And so to the extent we were able, we circulated through there were ultimately 3 or 4 different roles: an introduction, a demo, content, and then some cautions. Excuse me. So we were able to make those changes and really give folks the opportunity to do new and big things for themselves, which was awesome. In the end, what worked was that flexibility was our superpower. We were able to scope and scale depending on the audience, who was there, who was asking, and who was available to present. And then whereas flexibility was our superpower, collaboration was our secret weapon. To go back to what James had said earlier and to toss a nod to Todd in the earlier presentation that he gave, because we had those relationships built across campus, especially the folks on the team who had been here longer than others, it really did allow us to be incredibly successful in a short period of time because we weren't the only ones doing the work. We were collaborating, we were using our resources, and really those relationships came to be what made this as successful as it was. So what's next for us? We don't know. The demystifying AI trainings are done through our area, Learn at UW. There'll be no more in the future with the 3 of us as a part of it. And we don't know what comes next on that front. But what we do know is that from this process, we learned that we can apply flexibility, collaboration, our skills and our teamwork to basically whatever presentation or problem that comes our way that needs a creative solution. This really showed our abilities to respond effectively, appropriately, and with a great product.
Thank you, slide.
So that's the thank you for us with, oh, we all went really fast. Man, we went much faster. We were very concerned about time. None of us needed red cards. Are there any questions from the group? May I ask just quickly, did anybody in here attend the demystifying AI trainings? A couple folks, okay. Was there anything as an attendee that you heard today that was surprising? Or questions that you or not? I'm just wondering if there's something there. Yeah, please.
Got a microphone, by the way.
Yep.
For Zoom, this is so Zoom folks can hear the questions as well. And I'm gonna, yep, we'll just take it.
Connor Klecker in CALS, and I want to say it did not feel like you were building the plane as this where these were going along. So kudos to you. They felt very deliberate.
No attention to the man behind the.
Thank you very much for that compliment. We appreciate it.
The 3 presenters stand up font.
Yeah.
I'm Mark Wegener from OVCR, and I will say I promoted this event locally just within our admin staff at the Vice Chancellor for Research office. And I send out links all the time and don't get much of a response, but I got so many positive responses back from people that had taken that training. I think specifically from people that feel like the ship has already kind of sailed with respect to AI, and like it's kind of embarrassing almost if I don't know a little bit, like the fundamentals. But people, I think, really responded to the level that you set that training at. And so I'm wondering if there's any kind of a plan to continue training kind of at that level, meeting people from all different backgrounds, not just IT, kind of where they are.
I'm sure there are plans to do so. The 3 of us are not aware of what those might be.
There is a committee that has been spun up on campus that is supposed to be addressing that. We just don't have details.
And I just want to say too, that was one of our aims. And that was something we also saw in the feedback when we would give surveys out both in the sessions and afterwards, is that people felt a lot of the sessions that were currently happening were, like you said, were kind of like intermediate or beyond, where that was part of the void that we were feeling, is that there wasn't like, here's just the basics, and we're not starting with basic assumptions like you know this, you're already using this. We started at the most basic level.
Yeah.
I had a
Todd.
question for you, and we, Todd Schechter, thanks so much for this. Impressive to see all the stats. Can you share like what kind of questions came up from participants during the talks? I imagine after doing 22 of these, you saw some similarities in questions. Love to hear kind of what kind of things came up. Thank you.
The number one theme that had the most amount of questions consistently was the section that is not represented by anybody here, and that was the data section. Dan Vokes, who's the data steward for our department, got more questions about what can and can't be used, what data, sensitive data, privileged data. He got the vast majority of questions and did a great job of saying, talk to your data steward, with giving some generalizations. Beyond that, we got questions about vetted tools, plug for vetted tools, check out the vetted tools page. Some folks didn't know that existed, so a little bit of awareness. What would you guys add to that?
I would say, piggyback off that, that's the definite themes. A lot of people that they may have known about Gemini and Copilot, but they weren't fully logged in. So that was a big one. It seems like a really basic one, but to have that sort of like vetted security, they need to be logged in. The data was huge. The data ran the gamut though. So different groups were asking about FERPA. Some were more HIPAA centric. Grading. How can I use this with my classroom? How can I de-identify information? And those questions were highly nuanced. It felt like there was never a clear-cut example of go ahead and put that in AI. It's always nuanced. It always depends.
And to give you an example of that, we had one of the groups asked us to do a demo about writing a letter of recommendation, a very common ask. How can I make this easier for me? And we had more internal debates of, is this an appropriate demo? Because there's so many more steps involved. There might be getting the registrar's office involved in order to release grades. And are you putting a student's transcript or their resume into AI? Is that your property, their property? And we were, again, negotiating those things as we were getting asked of, hey, we'd love to do that demo. It's too complicated for us to use that. Would you be okay with using a sample budget set instead? So sometimes we had to say no in that way.
And I'll just say, one of the consistent asks that we got is a lot of people were like, this is great. I want sessions where I get to play around with the tools more. Like, because we had an interactive demo, but consistently after every session, at least one or two people were like, I want the next thing, which is I want a safe place to play around with this stuff.
And we talked about incorporating that into the trainings we do each semester at the beginning of the term. Our colleague Cliff Cunningham coordinates those trainings. And we've talked about creating like an office hours sort of space where we can just hang out and be available to folks.
Thank you.
I want to be conscious of time and get you guys time in a second. One more question there, yeah.
Yeah. So thanks for the presentation. It was interesting to hear your process. As I'm thinking about, Deanna Schneider, I'm with the Division of Extension. As I'm thinking about like how we're moving towards a more federated approach to IT, and I think this is one of the areas where also we can think about how does federation work in this space. I'm curious what your thought process was in terms of who you collaborated with or how you chose those people. So Extension's been doing this training since 2024. We could have helped you a little bit. Your spin on it is a little different than our spin, obviously, because you're more in the teaching and learning space than we are in the outreach space, but a lot of the core concepts are all the same, right? So like this would have been a great opportunity to be collaborative in a federated model. And I'm just curious, like, how do we improve the way we can collaborate so that if you're thinking about developing something new, that the people who are out there in the schools, colleges, and divisions have an opportunity to say like, hey, we did that. And we'd love to help you.
To use a statistical term, which is so ironic because I had to take it 3 times, we use a sample of convenience. We asked people we knew around us that we had those relationships built with, because we had such a tight timeline on it.
I wish we'd known that you'd been doing that. We totally would have outreached. Yeah.
But to your point, that really will be an asset as we move to the federated aspect of just more knowledge of who's doing what and where, and the aspects of collaboration. So it's not, we didn't have to recreate the wheel. And it was great. I mean, we learned stuff all along the way, but you're absolutely right. That would have been a great resource to be like, okay, what if this is representative or useful for us? With one, so you can all make it to the next session by the time they start. Anything last, any comments, concerns, criticisms, hoorays? All right, well, let's get outside and enjoy some sunshine while we can today.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you guys, everybody.